What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's time for a rewind. I know that it doesn't make a ton of sense to drop a May rewind in the middle of July. Unfortunately, as is the case pretty much every time on this channel, I'm super duper far behind on pretty much everything. So you're getting a May rewind in July, but I'm hoping to start to catch up a bit. I'm going on a trip in like a few days out to Tennessee. I got a friend who lives in Kentucky, and I'm gonna go spend some time with him. And that friend is a guy named Hero Bishop. I have family in Tennessee, so I'm gonna go visit my family in Tennessee, and then from Tennessee, I'm gonna take a drive out to Kentucky to hang out with my friend. By the time that this video comes out, like that trip should be done and dusted, and I should have some pictures that I could post here from that trip, and we might be doing a video together, possibly over on his channel. So if we do end up doing that video, I'll link it. But the whole point of this video today is that I'm going to talk about all of the manga, digital and physical, that I read in the month of May. And hopefully next month or so I want to really start trying to get back on track and getting these released at least the following month from when, I read the thing, and not like 2 months later. I read some really good stuff in May, and I really want to talk about it. I've been wanting to do it, but I had to get out my Tomiya video first, and now that my Tomiya video is done, it's time to talk about some great stuff that I read. So pull up, sit down, and let's talk about some manga. Alright, so we're going to open this video with some digital manga, and right off the bat for the digitals, I'm going to talk about Drama Queen. I've been reading Drama Queen since the first chapter dropped. It is one of the most ridiculous series that I've ever read. Looks like the readership is starting to fall off a little bit, unfortunately, but it's still doing pretty well from what I saw. Like it was getting I think 200,000 views or something like that, per chapter. Now it's kind of dropped into like the 80,000s, per chapter. So I'm kind of hoping that it's able to, keep up that momentum and still get reads and whatnot, because it's still pretty early on. I think as of the making of this video, it's up to like chapter 20 something. This is something I should have also probably mentioned before for anybody that's new to the channel. When I do these videos, I tell you the release schedule for all of these series, if it's a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever chapter count it is up to at present, and the day of the month that it releases on typically. For the most part, most of the manga that I'm reading right now is ongoing. None of it has ended just yet, though I think a couple of these are coming to a close pretty soon. I know Ruri Dragon is on like hiatus or something. It might be on hiatus for a while, because all it says on the page for that volume, for that series, it just says like next chapter will release when it is determined, when the time is determined, or something like that. So I'm not sure what's going on with Ruri Dragon. I just hope that the creator of that series is doing okay, he's doing well. Goku Rakugai is another one that I keep up with. That is a monthly series. I read every chapter pretty much as it drops. I don't know if I always read them, day of, but I do keep up with it, and I always read those as they drop. And there's physicals now as well for Goku Rakugai. I think there's like 3 of them so far, and it's a monthly series. So, I mean, I feel like even if you like started to read it digitally, you really wouldn't have like a ridiculous amount of reading to catch up on, like as if it were like a weekly series. Like weekly series they get a little bit harder to catch up with, where like if you miss like 5 or 6 weeks, you got like 5 or 6 chapters to catch up with, or if you haven't read it in a long time, you could have up to like 30 or 40 chapters, because it just keeps going and going and going and going. With like monthly and bi-weekly series, you have a little more leeway to catch up with the thing. But some other series, like weekly series, like you miss a few months, and you got a lot of reading to do. Well, yeah, I read Goku Rakugai, every month as those chapters drop. I think the chapters are still good, but I kind of wish it would come out a little more frequently, given that it's, by the time that the new chapter comes out, like I kind of already forgot, what was going on, because I keep up with like a lot of different stuff. So it would be cool to see it come out more often, but I don't know what the creator situation is and why, it comes out monthly. There could be something, there could be a reason there, like a really specific reason as to why it is a monthly series, but the artwork is maintained solid. We're in a part right now, we're getting characters sort of backstory, so we're learning more about what's going on with them, and it's a girl that is a personal favorite character of mine, and it's cool to see where she came from and how she ended up where she is. Mad, one of the best series out right now. Every new chapter of this series is just an absolute blast to read. I kind of like that, it went from being like super miserable to just like kind of fun, out of nowhere. Like, it's become like a really fun story. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to ruin it, but it's pretty much like alien invasion type of story. You go into it not really knowing too much about it, but it does paint a pretty bleak picture, and for a lot of it, it is a pretty bleak story, but you start to meet like a lot more characters, as the story goes on, and some of them are like really eccentric, like kind of goofy eccentric, but they're fun. Like everybody in this story is some sort of goofball character, and like we're starting to meet other characters that like I don't want to like get too into it. I don't want to start spoiling too much of it, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. It's gotten like way better. It's like super miserable at first, and then just out of nowhere it becomes like a super fun story, and like I love keeping up with it. I think it's bi-weekly, so yeah, every time a chapter drops, I'm right there, keeping up. And one of my favorites ever, Dan to Dan. I read every new chapter of Dan to Dan as it drops. I think it's like 2 or 3 chapters away from 200 if it hasn't already hit 200. Today's Monday. Today's typically the day that I would read that the new chapters would drop, and I typically keep up with them as they drop, but I didn't read this last one, so this could have been 200 for all I know. But yeah, dude, I love Dan to Dan. I didn't go see the last movie that came out, the Evil Eye one, because I went to see the first one, and there was like 30 minutes of just kind of like background about it, which is cool. It's like, it's cool to see the creators and actors and whatnot, and to see Yuki Nobutatsu himself kind of talk about the series, and see his editor talk about the series, and then the people that made the anime and whatnot. It was cool, but it's like I went there to watch the anime. I didn't really go there to watch half an hour of talk, and then then you get like half an hour, I guess, 3 episodes of the show. But I mean, I think they did the same thing with the Evil Eye one, because I saw somebody had posted from their experience at the theater, and like they were showing the creators and whatnot talking about the episodes. But I read the manga, man, so like I already know what's gonna happen. I can wait until the episodes begin to drop. But I'm really excited too for the Chainsaw Man one, for the Reza arc, like that for sure. But in seat at the theater. If we get it, in theaters, which I'm sure we will, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. I'll definitely be there to watch the Chainsaw Man Reza arc movie. That will be extremely wild to see, considering that I read that part years ago. to see it animated is just going to be absolutely bananas, and I cannot wait to see that. Astro Royale. I still need to catch up with this series. I think I'm within the last like 10-ish chapters. I think I was at like 41 or 42, and it's a total of 50 chapters. At the beginning of the video, I'd said that I haven't been keeping up with anything that's over, but apparently I was wrong. For the most part, most of the manga that I'm reading right now is ongoing. None of it has ended just yet. No, so yeah, I totally forgot. Astro Royale is a completed series. It's 50 chapters, completed in 50 chapters, and there's even a physical that's coming out. But my guess is that they didn't realize, when the physical started to drop, or when the physicals were announced, because it wasn't canceled yet. I think I even probably mentioned this in my last video when I talked about Astro Royale. I probably even mentioned that there was like the physicals were coming out. Just had a crackle of thunder outside. Definitely threw me off. But yeah, when the Astro Royale physicals were announced, the series was still ongoing, and from the looks of it, it was probably going to be considered to be ongoing for a while. So it's going to be interesting to see how many physical volumes we get out of the series. You know, given that it is 50 chapters, and how many chapters typically go into a series? If you know, please let me know in the comments. But my guess, it's like anywhere from like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 chapters or something like that go into a single volume. Yeah, we're gonna be working around Thunder. I'm gonna have to work around Thunder because I got to get this video done before I go on vacation. But yeah, I think it's somewhere around there. If you know like a better answer, please let me know in the comments. Or even I could just like at some point in time just bust open a volume. But I think it also has to do with like how long, you know, the chapters are of each individual series that determines, you know, how many chapters will go into a series. But well, yeah, Astro Royale is completed, ended at 50 chapters. I'm feeling like, unfortunately, it's probably like the last like so many or so chapters are probably going to be rushed because, you know, it's kind of setting up another arc, and I don't think it was meant to end on the arc that it's setting up. I feel like it was just going to be another arc, and then they kind of told Ken Wakui that like that was it, you know, time to shut it down. So that was kind of unfortunate because he is a great creator, and he was able to tell like a huge story, you know, with Tokyo Revengers. It's unfortunate that he wasn't able to do the same with Astro Royale. All right, next up we got Astro Baby. I love this series. This is coming to a conclusion as well. This is Shiro Moriya. Shiro Moriya also did another series that I absolutely love called Soloist in a Cage. And one of my last, I don't know if it was the one before this or the one before that, I gushed over Soloist in a Cage because I love that series. I'd read the first volume of it like 3 years ago in like 2022 for a video or a couple of videos, and then yeah, it was one of my favorite series of 2022, and for whatever reason it took me like a really long time to finally just sit down and finish it, but I finally read the final volume of it this year and absolutely loved it. Phenomenal series start to finish. Astro Baby is good as well. It's a solid read. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Soloist in a Cage, but it's still a lot of fun, and I still recommend reading it. I talked about it, Astro Baby, I talked about that in one of my first impressions videos that I did a while ago. I kind of want to get back to doing those. I don't know where I'm at, though, with that, given that, like, I'm trying to do these rewinds, and then, like, I also want to get out, like, a Tomiya kind of a video, you know, where, like, I talk about a specific series for, like, half an hour and kind of break it down and talk about the ins and outs of it and whatnot. So I don't know where that's at, but hopefully, you know, I can come back because there's a few series that, like, I really want to talk about in a first impressions video. Ichi the Witch. I love this series. Every time I talk about Ichi the Witch, it's literally just to gush over it. We just concluded an arc, which I guess I'll have to re-talk about this in June because the arc ended in June, but I was also keeping up with it in May, and I pretty much kept up with it since it was like up to chapter... I started reading it when it was like up to like chapter 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there is when I started reading Ichi the Witch. But Ichi the Witch is such a fun story. But yeah, where it's at right now, you pretty much have Ichi and this dude friend of his combating this sort of... I don't know if I want to call it... It's like a nefarious, ubiquitous, you know, surreptitious... It's kind of like an ubiquitous, surreptitious, sort of omnipotent, omniscient sort of presence, you know, and it's everywhere, it's all encompassing, and it's really good, dude. Like, the last, like, so many-ish chapters were so rad, dude. Just, like, action goodness, but it was so much fun, super duper well drawn. Great writing. Ichi the Witch has some of the strongest writing that I've seen in a story. It has some of the most amazing artwork that I've seen in the story, and as I'm talking about it, I'll show panels on either side of the screen of the stuff that I've seen going down in Ichi the Witch. And I'm really excited for whatever the next arc is going to be and see, you know, where it's going to go. And we have essentially like an established villain who I think is going to be like the first big villain, if not ultimately the big villain. It's kind of like a they-them sort of a villain, doesn't really have a gender. But seriously, one of the best villains that I've seen so far, because we really don't know why it does the things that it does. It's just kind of like it just does them because reasons, but it works. And typically, like, I don't like that, you know what I mean, in a story. Like, I want to know why, you know, if, like, was one of my complaints with my Tomiya video. It's like, I want to know why. Otherwise, you're just doing things because reasons. And that always doesn't really feel, it just feels kind of like lazy. But I feel like in this story, there's probably going to be a reason, because these are two creators that are just way too good at what they're doing for there not to be a reason. I'm sure like at some point in time, we'll get background for the big bad. That might be the big bad of the whole series, or might just be the big bad right now. But either way, I'm super excited to see where the hell this story is going to go in the future. I love every second of it. Every time a new chapter drops, I am right there, but in seat reading. Wild Strawberry. This is coming to a conclusion pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends in like the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 chapters. Wild Strawberry is absolutely strong. One of the best series that I am reading. Storytelling is but it's still pretty good, you know, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to ruin anybody's experience that maybe wants to pick it up and check it out. I don't know if it's ever going to get a physical. It might get a physical. I know it has like digital collections, you know, where it's like, where there's like 4, 5, 6, 7 chapters, you know, collected into a volume essentially, but it's a digital volume. I don't know if they're going to spend the money or whatever to, you know, put it out there to license the physical releases or not, given that I don't know how well it's done, you know, and I don't know if they want to invest the money in it. There's probably other projects that they want to invest the money in. Writing is not the best in the world, but the artwork and the situations and some of the stuff that happened in the last chapter was just like, geez, dude, we're doing that, man. Like, this is full throttle. Like, this is end game. It feels 100% end game. There's no going back at this point in time. Not sure how it's going to end. I'm really hoping like this dude just sticks that landing, given that I'm pretty sure, you know, he had other plans for what he wanted to do with the series, and unfortunately was unable to see those plans to fruition. It would have probably gone on for a little longer if not for, you know, getting hit with that. Let's rush, let's get it done so that we can move on to something else. Something else, I guess, will fill the slot that Wild Strawberry was taking up. So I started reading Heartgear digitally, and now I have the 5th volume of Heartgear physically, and I kind of flipped through it to see, you know, like where I am in the physical, and I'm literally like, I read enough of the digital that I'm like 3 chapters away from, you know, being done with what would essentially, you know, make up the physical release. I hope that makes sense. You know, like I read digitally up to the point, you know, where all of that, you know, is in the physical, and then like the last 3 chapters of it, I don't know if I'm going to read those. I don't know if I should just read those digitally, or it's like, I mean, I have the physical. I mean, this is technically a June 1, because I read some of this in June as well. So this is technically kind of like a June 1 as well, but so this is kind of like where I'm at. Or really, the reason that I started to read these physicals too is that one thing that you don't get with the digitals that you get with the physicals for Heartgear is right here. These aren't in the digital, but it is in the physical, and I really recommend, if you have the physicals, like if you buy it just to support it, but you're reading it digitally or whatever, like I am, read these excerpts, because they're really good, and they add so much context to the world. It would be rad if these were also in the digital, but they're not in the digital, so like I kind of like was flipping through the book and looking for these so I could read them, because these are a lot of fun, dude. It's like, it kind of reminds me of like playing the video game Nier Automata. Like you would pick up data logs or whatever, and like there would just be like tons of world lore, and that's kind of the same thing with Heartgear. So like, yeah, if you have the physicals but you haven't read them because you were just buying them to support like I do, definitely read this, because there's so much stuff that just expands the world, and it just goes beyond, you know, being Chrome and the girl whose name I can't remember, fighting, you know, to stay alive and whatnot. It definitely expands the world out a lot more, and like you learn about the history of gears, combat gears, I think like romance gears and whatnot, you know, the different ones, like, because there's all sorts of gears that exist in this world that were everywhere from military to whatnot, and there's a lot of really good stuff that happens in these volumes, dude. This is such a great series, dude. To see like the way that the world is built, and to see how much humanity these characters have. They're robots essentially, like all of them are like combat gears and whatnot, and there's one that's like a general, and I think it happened somewhere in this volume, and he went to war, and like it kind of like ties into real life, you know, because like there's veterans that come back from war and they feel like they're still at the battlefield even though they're home, you know, they're home here, but they just feel like part of them is still in, you know, whatever war zone they were in. And this is real. Like, this is a real thing. You could ask certain veterans and they'll 100% say, you know, that it's something that they've felt or they feel, you know, where like part of them feels like they're still there. And that's really sad, you know, because you really, unless you've been in that situation, I've never been in that situation. It's like one of those things where like, I guess you just really can't understand unless you've been there and you felt it. And I feel like this kind of does that, you know, in a sense as well, where like there's combat gears that feel like they're still at war. And even though like the war has been over for like 200 years, they feel like they're still at war. So it's like a really human sort of aspect. And I think that was definitely on purpose. And it's definitely something that Tsuyoshi Takaki definitely looked into and, you know, really made an effort to bring to life within this universe. So yeah, this is definitely a series I don't think people should pass up. Definitely read Hardcover if you get the chance. All right, so the last digital that I'm going to talk about today is The God of Time. So this is a newer series. As of right now, I think it's like 6 or so chapters deep. There are these two young kids and they find a pocket watch that can stop time. And at first they use the pocket watch to do like a little harmless prank. Like they hang this kid over the edge of this like sort of like mountain, yeah, like kind of like a mountain edge, but there's like railing around it, like wooden railing. And they think they're goofing around and the kid starts to get pushed further and further out of range of where they can actually like pull him back. They wanted to scare him and instead they end up killing this kid by accident. Or I can't remember if they killed him or not. Yeah, I think they do actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure like I think they kill this kid. So they end up pushing this kid way too far out and they're unable to catch him to get him back to safety before time is up. And when time is finally up, he's so far out they can't do anything about it and he falls to his death. And it goes from being like the super like cute fun story in the first half to just being super duper dark and brutal. And I think one of these creators was also involved with Shoujo Noel. I think it's actually the one that wrote Shoujo Noel and then somebody else drew it or whatever. It's really not like a super duper strong story. It kind of meanders a bit, but it is, you know, it is fun. I've had a good time with it. I mean, I like to support stories, you know, like once I start reading something, I want to continue it, especially if it's not, if I like it, you know, and I decide that I want to keep up with it, you know, I'll definitely give it support and see where it's going to go in the future. And, you know, regardless of what it is, and I'll try to see it through, you know, to its inevitable. And even if it is a series that, you know, only lasts for so long, it's still always cool to, you know, try to ride things out. I did it with Ankoku Delta. I loved Ankoku Delta. I knew it wasn't going to last long because the readership just wasn't there, but I personally had an absolute blast with it and I loved every second of it and I read it all the way to the end. So yeah, I'm going to do the same thing with this series. As long as, you know, it continues to hold my interest, I'm definitely going to see it through to the end. Alright, so we are now on to the physical part of this video. So what I'm going to talk about right now is a series called Yokohama Station SF. So this for me was a 4 out of 5. This features one of the artists that worked on another series that I talked about in one of these videos called The Witch and the Night Will Survive. So for this, Gonbe Shinkawa, who is the artist behind that other series, he drew this, and then this is a separate writer from that series. But this is based on a novel that I've never read. Maybe I'll read it someday because I do like fantasy stuff. But pretty much Yokohama Station SF is this like station, this kind of like what started off, I guess, like as a train station that is like self-propagating or whatever. Like it just keeps adding on, it keeps expanding by itself. It's like a super complex machine that just keeps growing and building and, you know, keeps spreading and whatnot. And it's eventually going to end up somewhere. I think it's headed for like a certain mountain. I think it was like a part of the premise of the series. But There's people that live outside of the station, and then people from within the station can come and go as long as they have a card that says they are residents of the station. But if you are not a resident of the station, I think you can get a card that'll let you visit for like a set amount of time, like half a day or whatever. But once your time is up, you have to get the hell out. So that's kind of what happens with this dude. He ends up with a card, but I think he ends up with like a residence card from somebody. I can't remember like the whole situation, but I think there was a guy who was a doctor, and like he gets his card, or somebody gives him a card, but they're like anarchists or something, and they want to take the station down from the within. And he ends up getting a card, and he's somebody that grew up on the outside, was born on the outside, grew up on the outside. And there's people that will cast out their young, or cast out children and whatnot. Like, if parents have kids and they can't, I think it's a suica, because I think that's what you use in Japan. Like, you use suica cards, and I think that's a thing in this as well. Like, you have a suica, but they're like super duper expensive. It's like millions of yen or something like that. And you use the suica card to essentially buy a ticket for your child to be able to grow up on the station. But if you can't afford the ticket for your child, you know, to buy them a ticket to survive on the station, they get kicked off of the station. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in this series. I actually really enjoyed this first volume. It sat on my shelf for like 2 years, and like it was kind of like an impulse buy. I bought it because I liked the cover, and I was like, I'm never gonna read this. And then I was gonna sell it, but then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read it, dude. I feel like I owe this series that. I like that dude's artwork. I like Gonbe Shinkawa's artwork, so I'm just gonna check it out. And he ended up really liking it. Gave it a 4 out of 5. So yeah. Not a bad sci-fi story, you know. It was cool to see this dude do a fantasy series, and it's cool to see him now draw a sci-fi one. All right, next up we got Happiness Volume 4. It only took me like 3 years. It only took me like 3 years to finally read another volume of Happiness. I read the first 3 volumes of this series like 2 or 3 years ago, and then this fourth volume sat on my TBR shelf for like an insanely long time. But I'm actually finally putting like a serious dent into Happiness, and right now I think I am on volume 6. Yeah, I think I need to read volume 6, which I'll probably read in July. So volume 6 will be in my July rewind, and volume 5 will be in my June rewind, because I read that in June. But yeah, Happiness is such a great series, dude. Extremely depressing, but super duper well done, in my opinion. I've shared this before, and like, I don't know if other people agree with me or not. If you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. But from all this stuff that I have personally read by Shuzo Oshimi, I think that Happiness so far is his strongest story. I'm not done with it yet, so I can't make claims to that. You know, I'm also reading Blood on the Tracks, and Blood on the Tracks is really good. But I think, in my personal opinion, I think that this is so far been his strongest story. And I've read 5 volumes so far of it. I gotta read volume 6. I haven't read volume 6 yet. But yeah, vampire story, coming of age, kind of reminds me of like Stakeland. That's what I think of. I haven't seen Bones and All, so I can't really say too much about that. I do really want to see that movie. I've been meaning to for the longest time, but I just always end up, for whatever reason, passing on it and watching something else. Well, I really do want to see that. And yeah, this definitely reminds me of like Stakeland, coming of age, with like vampires and whatnot. Really bleak, but really well done. Some of Shuzo Oshimi's just most amazing artwork. The way he brings these creatures to life, and they're super feral, you know, like they're not glossy in any way, shape, or form. They're not cute. They are like literally like vicious hounds, you know, like they're wild animals. That's like the best way I can think of to describe it. They're wild animals. They're like almost untamable. But yeah, just all around solid character writing, solid artwork. There's certain panels where like there's no art, like text at all, and you just see what's happening, but it's so effective, you know. It's so lasting. The impression that it leaves is incredible. And yeah, so yeah, this is a 5 out of 5 for me, and it's not without, you know, it's not without good reason. Boys Abyss, Volume 6. This is one of the strongest volumes of the series. I gave this a 5 out of 5. This is kind of like, you know, I talked about this in a video a while ago, but this is like the culmination of a lot of different stuff that's been happening in this series, and it all really comes to a head in this volume, and it has one of the most ridiculous climaxes for a series. You know what I mean? Even though it's like only like halfway through the series. 14 volumes, I think, altogether that comprise Boys Abyss, and I think we have through volume 9 that are available right now physically in English. Volume 10, as of right now, I don't think has come out. I think volume 10 either comes out in July or August. I'm not really sure which one, but yeah, I finished volume 6. I'm actually in the middle of volume 8, so I might have volume 9 in July, and then just being completely caught up with Boys Abyss. So like when those physicals come out, I'll just read them as they come out. But yeah, this series is extremely brutal. This is like no holds barred misery. I mean, I don't know what else I could say about it that I haven't said a million times. I will say that, yeah, this is probably the strongest volume of the series, because like it really does, you know, all the stuff that's been building up really does come to a head in this volume. And then volume 7 does, I shouldn't really talk too much about volume 7 yet, because like that's going to be for my June rewind, but a lot of different stuff, you know, kind of does come to a head in this volume. So this kind of feels almost like a conclusion to the first arc of the series, and you see a lot of different characters that had, you know, threads building, kind of have their threads almost come to an end, you know, like the first part of those threads come to an end. And then volume 7 I'll talk about, you know, in my June rewind. But yeah, super strong series. If you don't mind something that's super duper dark and depressing and miserable, this one's a ton of fun. So volume 2 of Dracula, and then volume 3 of it concludes the series. But I had a lot of fun with this volume. I'll share my thoughts on volume 3 in the next video, but in my June video. But I really enjoyed this one. This ends on quite a cliffhanger. There are some things that are set up in the first volume that, you know, within this volume start to lead towards like a certain war between, you know, these two factions of werewolves and vampires and whatnot. But that doesn't really come to a head until volume 3, but I'm not going to talk about that, you know, until volume 3. But definitely some stuff happens in this one that I was not expecting. Really had an absolute blast with this. I don't want to say too much about volume 3, but I will say that I was a little disappointed in volume 3, but I'll talk more about that in my June video. But I still think it's worth checking out. I mean, even if you want to just read it digitally, if you want to buy the digitals instead of, you know, collecting it physically, or even buy the there's only 3 volumes, so if you want to buy it physically, that's cool too. Because I think the first 2 are super duper strong. Third one was kind of meh, you know, has like not the best ending, but I mean, it'll do, you know what I mean, closes the story out. But yeah, this one definitely, I think, because this volume was so strong, like, I think I was able to forgive the third volume for not being as strong. But super nonsensical, super duper funny, like, I love all these characters. Absolute blast to hang out with them and whatnot. I wish it could have gone on for even longer, but I don't know, you know, maybe it didn't do too well when it was being published. You know, it was being published in the magazine and it wasn't doing too well, so they ended up, you know, cutting it. But yeah, it would have been cool to see it last for a little bit longer. So after a really long time, I finally started reading Kowloon Generic Romance again. I read volume 3 of this series. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Wasn't completely in love with this volume. There's a character that's introduced that I don't feel like adds too much to the story. I mean, I guess it does help to deepen the mystery of this world, but yeah, like, I couldn't care less about the character that's introduced. I feel like he wasn't really like interesting in my opinion. I thought he was kind of boring. But there's another dude that's like his boyfriend or whatever. That dude is a lot of fun. But there's one guy who was like a forked tongue, and I thought he was kind of boring. But his boyfriend, a guy who plays his love interest boyfriend, whatever, he's a lot of fun. I liked him a lot. And I like Reiko a lot. I like her thing with Kudai or whatever that dude's name is. You know, it's like, gives me such strong in the mood for love feelings. Like, that's the strongest thing I get from this series, is in the mood for love. And it takes place in like a futuristic sort of Kowloon, you know, which was a city in Hong Kong that was like super duper dangerous. You know, both in that, like, there was a lot of crime activity, you know, like triads and whatnot, and also in that, like, it was just kind of like pieced together, like cobbled together you know, and it was like shanties or whatever. It was like super duper dangerous. So I ended up getting knocked down at some point in time. I don't know when exactly it was that I was raised. I think in like the early 2000s or something. But yeah, really fun story overall, you know, despite my few gripes with it. I need to read volume 4. I've got volume 4 on the shelf. I think it went up to 10. I think 10 is the last volume of the series. So like there are certain series like I want to like really push up and just start knocking out just to finish. You know, if I know that it has an end, you know, it's not an ongoing series anymore, it's completely finished. I want to try to knock those out to start kind of get on some of my other series that maybe are ongoing that I haven't really been doing too great of a job of keeping up with. So yeah, I've got a lot of plans for things to just like try to really start putting a major dent into my collection this year. So yeah, I got a ways to go. I still got like 7 more volumes to read of Kowloon, but you know, hopefully, you know, I start to like volume 4 a little bit more. I really would like to enjoy it more because I do like this creator's artwork. They have such gorgeous artwork. And this also has an anime. I don't know if I mentioned that in my other video or not. Or I don't even know if I talked about this in my other video. I think this is the first time I talk about it in one of these rewinds. But yeah, beautiful artwork. Excited to see where it's going to go in volume 4. Shimazaki in the Land of Peace, volume 2. This is a really good volume. I can't help it. Every time I read the series, it gives me serious Fable vibes. Especially this one scene with this dude who is the son of the guy who runs the coffee shop. He's got like a son who's like a deadbeat. He's like a loser essentially, you know what I mean? And he gets into bed with like some Yakuza types and they ring him, you know, they try to extort him. They use the son to try to extort the dad. And like the son's a complete idiot and he ends up getting taken by these dudes, but he tries to talk to Shimazaki, like he knows a thing or two, and he's like, oh, let me tell you what's up, what's what, and whatnot. He's like, they threw the dog a bone, you know, and he thinks that he's top dog now because these syndicate dudes threw him a bone. Little does he know they're essentially using him, and he's one of those characters who's just like a total idiot, you know, and Shimazaki sees right through the whole thing. Kind of remind me of The Punisher even. Like there's an episode in The Punisher where there's this kid, and he hangs out with these guys that are like a part of a construction thing, and he goes on a job with them, and he ends up dropping his wallet, and the guys that they were robbing are like these mob guys. They see his ID in his wallet, and they're like, we got you, kid. We know who you are. We know where you live. We're coming for you. This kind of made me think of that as well, you know, where somebody that's like way out of their element gets mixed up in something they should have never been a part of in the first place. But I love Shimazaki as a character, dude. You know, I kind of went into this series at first not really knowing what I was going to get myself into. Talked about this in my summer currently reading video, if I'm not mistaken. I absolutely had a blast with it. Shimazaki as a character is solid. It's cool to see, you know, where his journey is taking him and how he's trying to not use violence. He's trying not to kill people. As far as I know, I think he like just beats the hell out of those dudes that had you know, tried to screw over that kid or whatever. He's not really a kid, he's a grown man, but tried to screw over that dude, tried to use him and whatnot. I think he ends up just beating them up. He doesn't kill them. And then there's another dude too who's an assassin who was in the first volume, and he's like a deep cover agent and whatnot. The two of them have like a thing going from the last one, and it's really cool to see, you know, that being expanded upon and seeing them just continuing to try to go at it and try to take each other out. Absolute masterpiece. Cinema. Well, no, it's really good, dude. Solid read, man. I highly recommend. If you haven't read Shimazaki in the Land of Peace, definitely check it out. Next up, we got Hira Yasumi. Really liked this first volume of it. I got volume 2 on the shelf. I need to read it. I was going to read it this month, but for whatever reason, I just never got around to it. So I'm really hoping to get it done in July, get it read. But yeah, the same creator as Tokyo Alien Bros, and I loved the first volume of Tokyo Alien Bros. I got to read volume 2 as well. I have volume 2 on the shelf. But yeah, this is a fun read. Pretty much, this kid right here is just like a fun, loving dude. But he's a grown man, I think. I think he's like 18 to 20, somewhere around there. And then this girl is like his estranged cousin who he hadn't seen since she was like a little girl. But she's in college, if I'm not mistaken, and then he's like 20-ish. A lot of fun. He ends up inheriting this house from this old lady who had like no family or whatever. She had no kids or anything. I don't think she ever even got married. But like he would go and hang out with her. I forget like the context of how they met. I think he was like, he liked her garden or liked something, and she ends up, bringing him aside, feeding him, and then he just kind of starts showing up, starts hanging out with her, kind of acting like her grandson, and she likes him a bunch, like kind of like a platonic, grandson sort of a way, and it's a really cute story, dude. It's fun, it's like I don't know if I want to call it meditative. It's more like a slice of life, kind of like Tokyo Alien Bros is a slice of life, but that is like insane. Tokyo Alien Bros is insane. This is a little more lighthearted. This is a little more easygoing. Yeah, this is teen. Yeah, this is just rated teen. That's rated M. That's like a hard rated M for mature. Yeah, definitely. That's pretty hard rated. That's definitely an R. This is like this is definitely this is a little more fun. You know what I mean? This is definitely like a great read if you want like a light, something that you can read in public and not see somebody getting peed on. But yeah, this is definitely this is a lot of fun. I really like this series a lot. All right, so we got Inside Mari. This is volume 2 of Inside Mari. This is one of those series that I'm a fan of, like just offbeat sorts of stories, and Shuzo Oshimi really does do a great job with doing sorts of odd sorts of character studies, I guess if you will. Like he also covered something similar to this in a story called Welcome Back, Alice, which is one that I really liked a lot. I can't remember how I felt about the final volume, but I think I enjoyed the final volume of that. And I do kind of like these, I guess, I don't even know what to call them. Should I call them like counterculture sorts of stories? Not your typical sort of read and whatnot. This reminds me almost, I would say, of like a Being John Malkovich, but with a like grown dude who becomes like a grown hikikomori, who becomes like a young popular girl, takes over like a young popular girl's body. So it's kind of like a Being John Malkovich in Japan with a dude who trades bodies. Not really trades bodies with, but like, or maybe he does, because like so far like I don't think it's been revealed that happens. That's kind of what it makes me think of. It's kind of like I'd say closer to like a Being John Malkovich than like a Freaky Friday sort of a situation. But yeah, he takes over this girl's life and effectively like just destroys her relationships with all the people in her life because he's super awkward and he's a man, so the way that he would interpret situations and the way that he would approach situations is like the way a man would. Right now that he is, Mari, and he's effectively taken over her, life and body and whatnot, he still acts much like a dude and tries to befriend another dude who has a girlfriend who is like her best friend. And, given that they are, like two young teenage girls, to the other girl, it kind of feels like she's trying to steal her boyfriend, right? Like Mari is trying to steal this other girl's boyfriend. But what it is ultimately is that he's a dude, right? So like as a dude, he's trying to bro out. He's trying to bro out with this other guy. But he forgets that he's in the girl's body and that this other girl is like, bro, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's my man. You know what I mean? Why you getting all chummy with my man? Yeah, there's definitely, awkward situations like that, and it ends up ultimately really affecting Mari's life, and he starts to effectively ruin Mari's relationships with people because he doesn't realize that he is, in a girl's body, and there's dudes that, if a girl talks to them or is friendly towards them, their first immediate thought is, she wants to have sex with me. Like, those dudes are out there, right? Like, if a girl is even remotely nice to them, they automatically think that she wants them, that she wants to have sex with them, and don't look at it like, oh, she's just being nice. You know what I mean? And that's part of the reason too that some women just don't talk to men at all, because they're worried that they're going to somehow construe talking to a man, that he's going to want something from them. Unfortunately, that is a thing that happens. But yeah, definitely, I think that is a part of this story. It's that this dude, as a man, doesn't really know how to navigate being a young girl and is effectively destroying her life. So it is definitely an interesting sort of a character study. Next up, we got Dead Demons, Destruction, Volume 5, Inyo Asano. Can do no wrong in my book. I absolutely love this man. I've been reading Mujina Into the Deep, I just read volume 2, I think, in June, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I love Mujina Into the Deep. The first 2 volumes so far have been absolutely strong, and yeah, I'll talk about volume 2 in my June video. This is a series that I really need to like start putting a dent into, because I think it's like 13 to 14 total chapters. I think it's like 13, 12 or 13, I can't remember, to be honest. But yeah, really good story. I love the relationships between all of the characters involved in this story, and there's a definite there's definitely like a ticking time bomb, right? Like there's an event that you know is with 100% certainty going to happen, you know, and it's kind of building towards it, and it builds towards it with like this all-encompassing war, and you know, it's just like each day it gets worse and worse for all the characters involved, because you see the side of the people, you know, in this conflict, and then you see the side of like these aliens from outer space and whatnot. You know, you see their side of it, and you start to see more and more of their side of it as the story goes on. When you see like the aliens side of things, and you know, you see kind of like the oblivious human side of it, and it's I think it's a really great juxtaposition that could even be looked at a lens, you know, from reality. And I'm not going to say too much more about that than that. Yeah, this is a pretty strong, really well written story. We'll see, you know, ultimately as I get closer to it, you know, where it goes and how it concludes. I'm sure many of you probably already finished it, but yeah, I'm maybe a little bit less than halfway through it. Definitely need to read volume 6 soon. I wish I had more free time. I wish I had all the time in the world that I could just sit here and read nonstop. But like, I kind of cut it up between, you know, going out with my friends and whatnot, going out with my family, and, you know, doing things and having like a whole life outside of this. That's why it also kind of takes me a while to get videos out. It's that like I have other stuff going on. But yeah, I wish I had all the time in the world to just sit here and read. I would be able to like talk about so many more things, but it'd be further along too with a lot of these. But you know, I am doing my best to try to get, you know, a dent put into as much of the stuff as I possibly can. Gachakuta Volume 3. This was a 4 out of 5 for me. I really don't want to hate on this series, because I think the mangaka for it is incredibly talented. I think that she's an amazing artist, to be honest. She's an amazing artist. You know, grew up with like Soul Eater and whatnot. That was one of her inspirations, you know, for Gachakuta, and I feel like you can definitely see that, you know, in the story. And she just all around seems like a cool person. So it's like I have gripes with it, and like I feel bad about having gripes with it, because she seems like a really cool person, and you can tell, you know, by her interviews and whatnot that she really cares about the story. And then the graffiti artist as well, Hideyoshi Ando, really cares about it as well. And it's like I don't ever want to be mean about anything, because that's not why I do videos. I don't do videos to be mean. That's the last thing I want to do, is dog on like any series ever. You know, this is a channel that I made because I wanted to talk positively about a lot of stuff, but I feel like you also need to point things out. And one thing that I will say about Gachakuta, I'll say a lot of praise as well, but one negative is that I feel like some of it's kind of sloppy. Like some of the artwork is super duper sloppy. There's action scenes where like I have no idea what the hell is going on, because there's just so many lines going this way and that way. So that's my gripe. That's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5. That aside, characters solid. I love the characters. The writing for the characters is great. The situations, the instruments, you know, the vital instruments, the way that trash is used as, you know, kind of like a vital instrument, you know, like it gains like an anima or whatever. If abandoned for a long time, trash kind of takes on a life of its own, and they become like trash beasts. The characters in the story, like I said, you know, super duper well drawn. Really unique styles for all of them too. Like everybody has such like a steampunk, really cool, you know, flashy sort of a style. You know, like I want to say like fashionable, you know, sort of a style. I have nothing but praise for it. That's like my only real gripe for the story, is that sometimes it just looks really messy, and like I have no idea what the hell is even going on. I don't know who's doing what, and sometimes it just feels like it just cuts from thing to thing. there was no bridge to get us to that other thing. But that's a really minor complaint, you know, given that overall I think it's a really wonderfully written story. You can tell that Kei Urana really cares about this world, really cares about the characters that she's created, and it has an anime. Yeah, I don't know if it's out yet or if it's coming out soon or what. I'm probably not going to watch it because I really don't watch anime. Nothing against anime. I started watching anime when I was like 6 years old in like the early 90s because I'm an old man, and I watched it for a really long time. You know, I kind of stopped watching it in like my mid till late 20s. I just kind of like reading manga. I feel like I would rather just read the manga, and then I also just really don't have a lot of time to sit down and watch, you know, a lot of stuff. We've got Frankenstein. The last 3 volumes that I'm going to talk about for this series are all hardcovers, and we're going to start with Frankenstein. This was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. I had read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein story a really long time ago. I was like 23-ish years old, and I used to work at Applebee's when I was 23, and before work I would get to work like an hour early, and you know, I couldn't clock in until like 8 a.m. so I would just sit there from 7 to 8, and on my phone, on Kindle, I would read just books and whatnot. And one of the books that I would read before I could start my shift was Frankenstein, and I loved Frankenstein to start to finish. Thought it was incredible. I'd also read Dracula at that point in time. I read Dracula first, did not like it, thought it was super boring, and then I read Frankenstein and absolutely loved Frankenstein. Thought it was one of the best written things that I've ever read, and I ended up picking up this collection, I don't know, like a few years ago, I think, because I've had this collection on my shelf for a really long time, probably like 3 or 4 years. It's almost as long as this channel has been alive. I might have even picked this up during one of my haul videos. Yeah, I finally read it because I know I've mentioned this like every single time. I'm sure you're all probably tired of me talking about my Ito video, but I can't help it. I have to. As I'm reading these, I'm going to talk about them, and I have to talk about the reason, you know, why I'm reading them. And so, yeah, the first part of this is Frankenstein, but then like halfway through it, I don't know if it's like halfway through it or a little bit more than halfway. Yeah, it's a little less than halfway, actually. A little bit less than halfway. So like the first part of the book is not even 2/4, you know, and then like this all right here is a whole other story. So this follows like a whole other kid. This follows some random kid, kind of like a Soichi, I guess, sort of a character that Ito had created, and this other kid kind of lives in this mansion. Oshikiri, that's his name. Yeah, so right here it's 6 tales. You're probably going to be able to see it, but 6 tales of a kid named Oshikiri. And, well, let me talk about the Frankenstein thing too, I guess, since I really didn't say too much about that. But Ito's Frankenstein version is really good. From what I remember, I think it does follow Mary Shelley's Frankenstein pretty closely. But given that it's been like over 10 years since I read it, I can't 100%, you know, say that, oh yeah, it definitely follows it to a T or whatever. It does do a pretty good job, in my opinion, of following it, you know, from like the opening, you know, how we meet Victor Frankenstein to the ending and whatnot, you know, with, I don't want to say it just in case, you know, if somebody hasn't read, even though it's like over 100 years old, Frankenstein's like over 100 years old. For anybody that hasn't, you know, read it or hasn't read this or whatever, I'm not going to spoil it. But it does have kind of like the beginning, end, whatever. Oh, and Guillermo del Toro is also doing Frankenstein for Netflix or whatever, which would be really rad if it ended up in theaters. But yeah, first part, I think it follows Frankenstein pretty well. Beautiful artwork by Junji Ito, as always. I actually wrote a bunch for this. I was going to cover this in a video, and then ultimately decided not to. So I don't know. If you want to see my Frankenstein video, plus the Oshikiri parts, because I also covered a bunch of the Oshikiri stuff. If you want to see that video, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do it. You know, if enough people want to see that Frankenstein video, I'll do it. Otherwise, I'll just talk about it like next year some point. And then yeah, Oshikiri is this like high school kid who lives in a mansion, but there's like different tales with him, and each tale is a different Oshikiri. And in one of them, he's like a serial killer. In another one, a version of him is a serial killer, and he's trying to run away from that version of him. Another version of him in another story I think like injects people with like a sort of a poison and turns them into monsters, or turns them into like giant goo-ish creatures or something. Another one, he's got like friends, but he ends up killing them. In an alternate universe, he kills them, and then the friends that he has in this universe stop being friends with him because they find the alternate versions of themselves that the alternate Oshikiri had killed buried in the yard. So they're like, yeah, let's stay away from this dude before he kills us too. Yeah, it's a good collection, dude. I thought it was a pretty good collection. I wasn't expecting the end because, like, I didn't read the back cover, but it does say right here that it does include 6 stories of this kid named Oshikiri. I didn't know that because I went into this blind. I didn't read the back cover. I never read the back covers for anything. I usually try to just go into everything blind. So yeah, that was definitely a nice surprise. All right, so the second to last thing that we're going to be talking about is Vagabond. I don't think you all were expecting me to read this thing. So I got a video. My next video on the channel is going to be Vagabond. So yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler for my next video, but I wrote a ton. I've actually read the first 2 volumes of Vagabond, and I gotta say that I love it. I'm not gonna say too much about it here because I gotta save some stuff for my Vagabond video, but I will say that I've had an absolute blast with the first 2 hardcovers of Vagabond, and these are absolutely gorgeous hardcovers. I think that Viz knocked it out of the park with these gigantic volumes. This is my other one that I read, and I talked about it in one of my posts on YouTube. So I'm sure a lot of you probably saw my post where I was asking you all what you were reading at the time. And yeah, I ended up reading volume 4 of Berserk. So yeah, let's compare them. You know, pretty much neck and neck. You know, side by side. I'd say almost about the same thickness from the looks of it. I think that Vagabond one might be a little bit thicker than, yeah, I think it is actually. It's a little bit thicker than Berserk Volume 4. I'm glad that I decided to finally read this. I read it because I wanted to talk about it for a video, and you know, I was like, I can't read Volume 1 and then just sit on Volume 2 for like 2 years. I need to start making a conscious effort to start putting a dent into my hardcovers. So what I decided to do is that my goal is, and this is something that I'd stated like pretty early on when I started doing like my January rewind, is that every month I want to read at least 10 volumes of manga. So what I decided to do is once I hit my 10th volume of manga, if I have enough time, I'm going to read a hardcover. For June, I did that. You know, I kind of opened June by reading this, and then, you know, like I knocked out everything I needed, or no, I'm sorry, not June, but May, you know, I did everything I needed to do for May. But before that, I kind of opened with Vagabond, and then I ended up reading everything else that I needed to read, and like put a dent to it really quickly. And ended up, you know, closing it out by also reading Berserk Volume 4. So I ended up reading 2 hardcovers. And I at least want to read 1 hardcover every month. So that's what I'm going to try to do going forward, is try to knock out a hardcover every single month. So yeah, it's going to be really rad, in my opinion. And I'm going to be able to just start putting a real dent into my hardcovers, not just leaving them there unread for any longer. This upcoming month in July, I'm going to read Ubel Blot, and just kind of like keep going like that, and then get back into Berserk, and then just kind of jump around, read Vinland Saga at some point in time. I want to read all my hardcovers, no excuses. And yeah, Vagabond, great series. I don't want to say too much about it here. I hope you'll forgive me for not wanting to say too much about it here, because I have a video coming out about it that I'm going to be recording probably next week or something. Once I finish, you know, going through this one and editing it and everything, I'll talk about Vagabond. But so we pretty much follow this character right here, Miyamoto Musashi, who is based on a real life person that existed many years ago, many moons ago. I think, was it the Edo period in which he existed, somewhere around there? If I'm mistaken, I'll put whatever period, you know, the actual period was in which he existed. But yeah, seeing it brought to life by Takehiko Inoue, dude, just has such amazing artwork, and it's a shame that it took me this long, you know, to finally read it. I never read the paperbacks when I had them. I sold my paperbacks way back when, and yeah, dude, I'm not sure when Volume 3 is going to drop, but when that drops, dude, I'm jumping on it. I'm reading it. I don't care if it sets me back a bit, you know, in my goal to read, but I'll make it work somehow. I'll still get my 10 read. But yeah, I'm definitely going to try to keep up with these as they drop. Every time a new hardcover drops, I'm going to be there. Definitely putting a dent into it. And like I said, you know, once my once my video drops, I'll definitely have a lot more to say about it because I wrote a lot for my script. So yeah, hope you're excited for that one. All right, so let's close this thing out with Berserk Volume 4, Deluxe, I guess, Volume 4. This was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. This kind of closes out a certain arc, the Midland, I guess, if you will, Band of the Hawk, Golden Age sort of arc. Doesn't really fully close it out, but it does, you know, take you into the Eclipse, and then Volume 5, which I also read. I read all of Volume 5, but I read that in June, so I'll talk about that in my June rewind. This does start to close out one of the bigger parts of the story, and there is a part of it that kind of drags a bit, you know, with these Black Dog characters, sort of arc or whatever, and I felt like it just kind of went on for a little too long, and, you know, we kind of get a little bit of, you know, stuff with the Midland, the King of Midland and whatnot, and just overall, I think it's just a solid chapter, and then, you know, it closes out, you know, with the beginning of the Eclipse, and then in Volume 5, we get the rest of the Eclipse, and then, you know, it kicks off like a whole other arc, but I'll talk more about that in my May rewind. In my June rewind, I'm sorry. I feel like everything that Kentaro Miura did was done with an extreme level of love and care and dedication, and I'm really happy that I finally decided to get back into these hardcovers. And, you know, like I said, you know, I wanted to do this every month, read at least one hardcover. And my focal point is going to be Berserk. I want to try to knock these out ASAP. I don't think I'm going to finish, you know, all 14 volumes by the end of the year, but I do want to at least put a dent into it. I'd like to at least get to like 10, you know, by the end of the year. I think I can do it because I'm also trying to read other stuff. You know, I'm trying to put a dent into a lot of different stuff on the shelves. But yeah, I think I can definitely get at least try to get to 10 by the end of the year between, you know, everything else that I got going on. I'm reading and whatnot, and yeah, some really solid artwork in this volume. And yeah, I think this is the one where the black dogs or whatever are introduced, and then, you know, kind of ends, you know, towards near the end of this one, and then we are, you know, kind of catapulted into one of the worst events in this series, one of the most visceral, brutal events that has traumatized the hell out of people for many years, for decades. And I remember, you know, watching the anime when I was like 20 and seeing the Eclipse, and then it just kind of ends after the Eclipse, and it's just like, wow, dude, really? Like, that was absolutely horrifying, miserable, but yeah. And then it goes on, you know, Volume 5 kind of starts taking us into the new trajectory and whatnot, and once I get to the point, you know, where I left off from reading, you know, because I was reading this and I kind of left off at some point in time, I'll let you all know, you know, once I get to the point where I was reading it digitally a long time ago. I've talked about this a bunch on the channel. I left off at a certain point. My honest guess is like it's around Volume 7. I read it digitally for a long time, and I read a lot of it. So my guess it's where I left off is probably going to be around there, because he has like a whole crew again by that point in time. I'm not going to say too much about it because I don't want to spoil. But yeah, 4.5 out of 5 for me. Great read. Volume 5 I think was even better, but I'll cover that in my June rewind. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know this video got extremely long, but if you know my channel, you know that I like to talk about the things that I read. I don't just read them just to go, hey, I read this, I read this, I read this, I read this. You know, like 3-minute video and then it's over. You know, and I know there's a lot of creators that do that. I'm not one of them. I'm never going to be one of them. So yeah, my videos are always going to be extremely long. And I'm not saying that to be confrontational. Like I hope I'm not coming across as confrontational. I'm just saying, like, this is kind of a channel where, like, I really like to, you know, go in depth, you know, with the things that I talk about, and not just kind of be like, oh, I read this, I read this, I read this, you know. And it's like, how do you know that, like, I actually read it? You know, because I'm not saying anything about it. You know, if I just tell you that I read it and just like flash it up and that's it, and don't say anything about the content within it, how do you know that I'm not just flashing just random volumes of manga that I didn't read? You know, and I don't know, maybe I am being a little confrontational. No, this is a channel where I really care about the things that I read, you know, and I've been doing this for a really long time. I appreciate you all being here. I know I say it every video, but I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you all hanging out with me and spending time, you know, and watching some of these extremely long videos, because I know I've done videos that are like 2.5 hours and people actually sat there and watched all of it, and that just blows my mind. But I don't want this to be any longer than it needs to be, so I'm just going to say really quickly, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Please take care of yourselves until next time that we meet.